folks. I hope everybody's doing good. We have a new podcast, and today's the first episode. We have a new organization called Renegade Rebellion Media, and we're going to be coming to you to highlight politics that are going on across Virginia, in many different communities. You know, really things that are going on that no one really knows about, and we want to get the word out across Virginia. So we hope that this podcast kind of takes on a mind of its own, and that we can get whistleblowers and people in the community, and you know, people like Kalinda, that's a board of supervisor over here in Floyd County, just to talk about the happenings going on in the different communities. So today, our first guest, I figured we'd bring it over here to where I live, which is Floyd County, and I'm wearing my Floyd County hat. But we wanted to have a good friend of mine on this show to talk about, you know, what's brought her into politics, and we're just going to kind of have a chat and talk about politics. So welcome to the show, Kalinda.
Thank you, Marie.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
yes. Kalinda's been a big supporter of mine for years, helped me to get elected. I tried to help her get elected, and
It worked.
It worked. We both got in office, and it's just been crazy, hasn't it?
It has been. It's been very eye-opening, very disturbing, but
it has been disturbing.
It's everything I thought it would be and more, and I'm happy to be in the fight.
And I feel like we got into it intrinsically for what I believe are the right reasons. We both see so many problems in America, in our country. Kalinda is more versed on the Constitution than I am. I go to her with questions about the Constitution because she's, in my opinion, I guess. So tell me, how did you come to Floyd and come to getting involved in politics?
So I grew up in rural Northern California, chicken capital of the world, cow country, and farming, agriculture. When it was time to relocate, my mom moved out here and we followed. So it was like moving home.
So you would have been how old?
We've been here for 8 years, so I was in my late 40s.
Okay. So you moved. How did you find out about Floyd? How did she find out about Floyd?
She met her future husband online, and this is where he was. So she moved here, got married, and we followed. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it felt like moving home. Really friendly community, really nice, beautiful setting, and so it was an easy move.
And lots of similarities to the agriculture
and the topography.
Yeah.
Weather's a little colder here, but that's
That's what I really don't know. I guess the longitude, latitude lines determine, you know, not weather, but temperatures
and then the jet stream. There's a lot of variables.
Yes.
Yeah, and the rain is different here too. It's green here in the summertime, where it's brown in California in the summertime.
That's wild. I bet it looks totally different.
It does.
Well, that's so great. So you bring some outside perspective, and you were able, you know, Floyd is a small community. I think we have maybe
under 16,000
population. So, you know, I'm not originally from Floyd either, and it hasn't been hard to acclimate and, you know, become local, but, you know, a lot of people have been here for generations, and they have generational friends and family members, and I think when you come to a new community, it does take a while for people to trust you and to get to know you, and let's face it, California doesn't have a great connotation when it comes to politics right now.
Not at all. We did bring you Ronald Reagan, though, so I will take absolute credit for that. So don't forget.
Ronald Reagan.
There is a strong conservative streak in California. It just is quieted. It's, you know, kept under the rug because of the aggressive liberals.
The cities are
and
dominating.
The cities outvote the rural communities every time.
They do. It's terrible. It's such a shame. I remember reading on a group called New California that was trying to form a whole new state, basically to give the conservatives a voice. And I think I ended up calling the guy that was leading that charge because I was trying to figure out how in the world you secede and form a new state, because we've got some of those same problems in Virginia. You know, Northern Virginia dictates what goes on in the whole state, and it's just a few cities that are determining our fate.
Right.
And it's not our values in Southwest Virginia.
No. Southwest Virginia definitely is conservative, and we made it an absolute point when we moved here to become Floyd, not to have Floyd become
Floyd,
where
right?
we were from, because it didn't work there, and I see it not working here. What's happening with the government and with the community.
That's one of the reasons too that Kalinda and I became friends very quickly, is we both believe in reducing the size of government. We think government is way too big.
Absolutely.
And something needs to be done. It's got to be dialed back. You know, I think something like 51% of the jobs now are government jobs. It's now taken over.
Yes. Yeah. And government doesn't create anything. Government only takes and distributes. So I am a firm believer in a constitutionally limited government. You know, our founders were very aware of how out of control government could become. Once they can vote largesse, they absolutely will. And we see that everywhere. From the school being the largest employer in Floyd County to all of the associated government entities. Just it's a horrible weed that's taken root in our society and grows and grows and grows.
And I don't think people even realize, you know, you have your farmers, like this was eye-opening to me. When you get to know your farmers and they can't stand the government, they don't want the government in their business, but they're filling out all the grant forms and they're, filling out all the paperwork to report every little thing, and they're subscribing to, everything the government tells them to do.
Right.
So, and I'll never forget, during COVID, we went to Tractor Supply, my husband and I, one day. And of course it's all farmers pretty much at Tractor Supply. And everybody was like masked, all the way masked, terrified. You could see the fear in everybody's eyes. And yes, COVID was terrible, but I just couldn't believe the farmers had all lined up, to believe, every single thing that was being propagandized at that time.
I think when the basis of everything is, if you're afraid of the government, you've lost your freedom. Because now the government is controlling you, where our constitutionally limited government says the government should be not afraid of the people, but respectful of the people, because it is a government of, for, and by the people.
Right.
And when government is tyrannical, like they were during COVID, was the perfect example.
Yes.
They're on full display of how their government overreach.
When they shut down churches and businesses, and they decided who was essential and who was non-essential, and my restaurants got caught up in that too. We had to limit how many customers we could have in the door, and suddenly you can't pay your light bill, and it's a huge disaster. And the government just kept on rolling out regulations, and none of it even made any sense.
No, but you're not supposed to question anything.
No.
You're supposed to follow the science,
Yes.
not your logical thinking. So it's amazing.
And I never would have thought that would have happened in America.
Right?
It's shocking.
We did something in Boston, a few years ago, over a simple tea tax. And here instead, we've gone to putting masks on, shutting down businesses because we were told to.
I love that they dump their tea into the harbor, because that's the worst thing you could do to piss off a Brit. I mean, when you dump their tea in the harbor, what more of a thumb to,
Yeah.
I don't know. We had some pretty great people that came before us, and I know that both of us try to emulate that, and we have the greatest respect for that. I recently researched, I'm a daughter of the American Revolution. I just haven't finished filling out the paperwork because it's extremely extensive, but we researched, I want to say it's 5th or 7th generation lineal, straight back from my grandfather to Benjamin Chance, that actually fought as a patriot in the American Revolution. So, you just have, I've known almost from when I was born, that this country was so great and we have to fight for her.
And that's where I am too. I am also a daughter of the American Revolution and a descendant of the Mayflower. So my patriotism runs deep in my bones and my blood, and I will fight. for what's right. And limited government, constitutionally limited government, is essential for our freedoms and liberty. And you can't have a large government and freedom, because as soon as you have to ask the government for permission, like I said, you've lost your freedom.
That's right. That's so right. And that takes me to, wanting to ask you, so I know why now, of course, that you've wanted to get involved. It's intrinsic in your soul to fight for the country. But you've really been faced, since you've come on the scene, y'all have had a lot of truly constitutional situations that have arisen.
Isn't it crazy?
It's crazy, because you don't really think that in local government you're going to be faced with your knowledge of the Constitution.
No. My high school teachers would be appalled at my behavior then and where I stand now, because those things that they said really did, those seeds were planted in my brain, and I appreciate it, because I believe, again, constitutionally limited government, personal freedoms, personal property rights.
And we both came together, the Floyd Fest situation. So that's something that maybe, I don't know that the viewers are going to know what's going on in Floyd County, but how many months ago did that kind of present itself? A year ago? 6 months ago?
Oh, maybe it was the spring of this year, I believe, is when it really got going. So Floyd area is home to one of the most respected, world-renowned music festivals in the world. People come from across the world to go enjoy this 5-day music festival.
And they get like 20,000, 30,000 people.
Over the
big.
course of the
4 or 5 days. Yeah.
It's a huge event. Floyd Fest decided to move home. They bought property in Floyd County, and
because they were right outside the line.
They were next door.
They were like a mile or two right outside in Patrick County, but it was named Floyd Fest. But everyone had to come through Floyd to go to Floyd Fest. So they finally were able to buy their own farm. And they bought, 200 acres in Floyd?
About 200 acres. They did not have to come to the board. They did not have to ask permission to buy the property, just like you and I buy property. Because we buy property.
Because in Floyd County, we don't have zoning.
Correct.
So our county, I'm not even sure our county has business licenses.
They do in the town, but not in the county.
Right. So we're still free and kind of the Wild West. And that's why a lot of people like us move to places like this, is we like our freedom. We like our privacy. We don't want the government in our business.
Right.
But anyway, so
Floyd Fest bought property. It was announced that they were going to be doing Floyd Fest, and an amazing assortment of people decided that they didn't want that next door. They wanted the government to dictate what their neighbors could do. Don't ask them to have restrictions on their property, but definitely put restrictions on the neighbor's property. And I fought very hard for Floyd Fest to be able to do very reasonable things, have very reasonable accounting to the local government, so we could make sure it was safe and have some say in what was going on, but definitely let them have a significant amount of freedom to do their festival. They hadn't done anything wrong, so I didn't feel it was right to punish them before they had done a wrong.
And gosh, that festival's gone on for
20 years.
20 years. I don't know.
They're not going to be self-destructive. They're not going to, it would not be in their best interest to ruin their own property that they own. So
right.
It just, the logic factor.
And some of the same players that were involved in going after making sure Floyd Fest couldn't utilize their property, one of those families, I believe, they had come before the board because they didn't want people shooting guns any longer on their property. They wanted a noise ordinance restriction. So, I fought those battles over in Christiansburg with noise ordinance restrictions, and it was such a debacle. I mean, it ended up, they couldn't figure out who to exempt and who not to exempt, and before you knew it, people couldn't start their own weed eaters after 5:00 p.m., and it was such a nightmare. And even the local police department in Christiansburg, they had to, I think they bought like a $5,000 or $10,000 decibel meter, and nobody could figure out how to use it. And they would show up on the scene and they couldn't get the decibel meter to work, and they didn't understand tolerances, and it was just the biggest nightmare. So when I saw that we had, citizens wanting to implement more government, decibel meters, what a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's that opening the Pandora's box of, you start that restriction, where does it end? You know,
It's a slippery slope.
it's the cows that moo at night when they're in heat. It's the dogs that bark because they're protecting the cows from the coyotes. It never ends. Once you start
Right.
those regulations, truly, they will never end, and they will come for
And you end up having to give exemptions, for churches to
Right.
ring their bells and for different groups. But where do you draw the line on that?
Right.
So, if you're going to exempt one group, you got to exempt everybody. So,
why do the restrictions to start with?
it's a terrible idea. Terrible.
Yeah.
But we definitely agreed on people having private property rights. And
Absolutely.
we think that's a major tenet of what our country is, and we need to abide and uphold that belief. And so I knew, Kalinda, you stood up hardcore for that, and I'm sure you came under a lot of aggression. And
Absolutely. Floyd County for me used to be a place I didn't have to lock my front door, and now it's always locked
yeah,
because people are not tolerant
yeah,
of freedom. Freedom is ugly.
the most tolerant are actually the most intolerant.
Yes.
Is what I've found.
Yes.
It is very ugly. I worry. Someone texted me yesterday, and I was telling them that we're working on a podcast and we're going to do some whistleblowing and talk about Virginia politics. And they said, "Well, are you going to be at your office tomorrow?" And I said, "Yeah, if I don't get pipe bombed first." Because
Pretty much.
I mean, I've gotten threats and letters and some really disgusting stuff that's come in my mailbox that they've actually placed in my mailbox without a stamp. And it's crazy. You don't think that there's really loonies out there, but there are.
They are as crazed to prevent somebody else's freedom as they are to try to protect their own.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
That's so wild. So that was I guess that was one of your first big,
It was.
when you got elected, the Floyd Fest, and it's still kind of ongoing. I know there's a few folks that still come to meetings and they kind of try to FOIA and cause problems and whatever. I don't know if they're going to be running for office or whatever, but I'm definitely going to be working against them because I believe in, keeping our freedoms. So, so after Floyd Fest, what's kind of the timeline of what all's gone on in your...
As soon as Floyd Fest started dying down, it was budget season, and that's a joyous ride.
Oh no.
And then it was this local event that happened. That there's always been some controversy, the townies versus the people in the outlying rural areas. The town is definitely significantly more liberal leaning than the countryside, and there's always been it feels like a significant rift in who participates in what.
Yeah.
And this local art center had somebody rent their facility, just like churches rent their facility, but for a lot of people it crossed the line. Now we don't have zoning, we don't have moral restrictive ordinances for behavior.
The town has a little bit, right?
The town has zoning.
Yeah, they have zoning.
Yeah. But we don't have those ordinances to say you can and can't do X, Y, and Z, so,
So, right. So basically what went on, and I'll say the name of the place, it's a place called the Junebug Center. And to the best of my knowledge, the Junebug Center, it's a place for arts, it's a place for crafts and children. They do a lot of children's events. It's been a great place in our community. I've really always thought very highly of it and thought, it's got a lot of artisan, they teach a lot of classes.
They do a lot of drama. They have a story room where they do, dramatic story stuff and plays. So it's definitely a creative outlet for a lot of the artistic leaning people in the community, and I have absolutely nothing against that. You do what you want to do.
Right. And they're a nonprofit.
Correct.
So the way that this presented itself to the Board of Supervisors is that nonprofit is given some money from our county, which are taxpayer dollars. So, I guess what happened actually at the Junebug Center is they hosted an event, a drag queen show. I guess this was maybe
A drag show, yeah.
2 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
And I did not go. I did not attend. We were out of town. I didn't, there was a lot of people that protested the event, and I'm sure there were also Floyd people that supported the event. But what really sent me into orbit is when I saw pictures from the event, and of course it's men dressed as women, and first of all, my first issue with it is I'm a female, I'm a very strong female, and I don't particularly love men dressing up in these caricatures of women. To me it's over the top, it's all this excessive makeup, and I understand in their world it's drama and acting and whatever, but it's almost to me a little bit like making fun of women.
In my medical history, that would be, if a woman was dressed like that, she would be described as manic.
Yeah.
With the excessive makeup and the garish outfits.
Yeah.
It's not your standard everyday street clothes that are worn. It's definitely a character.
It's a caricature. It's like it's a joke almost. Like it's making fun of women, and a lot of times, the body parts are over the top, and the hips and all this. It's this over the top look. The lips are exploded and
everything's exaggerated.
Yeah, and to me, it's very off-putting being a strong female and seeing men basically making fun of women. So that's my first issue. But the second issue, from looking at pictures of this event, there were little kids there. There were kids that were like minors. They were probably elementary school age, maybe 5th, 6th grade, sitting in the audience, waving dollar bills at this little striptease, which it appeared to be a striptease. I don't know how many clothing items came off or how it worked. I wasn't there, but the kids are waving dollar bills, and these men are running around provocatively. And there's another picture of a man, and he's spread out across the floor with his rear end facing these kids. It appeared he was gyrating, twerking, for these elementary school kids. And I think it's obscene. And we kind of dug into some state code to see if there's any code against it, and there is. There's decency and being around minors, and we've actually even sent this on to the AG's office to get an official opinion on, if they think that there's been laws that have been violated, because I personally believe there are. And I think, I gave this example, even for a nonprofit, they have to comply with a lot of reporting guidelines. They have to really stick to certain parameters. And, I don't know that that all that has been met. And I just think.
And the extension of that is if you're a nonprofit and you're doing your own thing, that do you. But as soon as you start asking for taxpayer money,
right,
then you have a higher level of accountability
and scrutiny. Yeah.
And I have to answer to my voters. If you're just doing your own 501c3 thing, you answer to your donors and your board.
Right.
But as soon as you get taxpayer money involved, then you have to account to all the taxpayers also.
And this community, the Floyd community, it has the appearance that it's liberal, because a lot of the more liberal, left-leaning folks, they own the buildings in the downtown. They've been able to get the grant money to fund their business ventures. Right. So when you come into Floyd, it looks very eclectic, it looks very artsy, it looks like, it's all artisans, when in fact it's not. It's like 70% conservative Republican here. It's the old-timey farmers. It's conservative values. So we've all managed to get along for the most part, but when you bring this social clash to this area, people are very outraged. And I've heard from probably hundreds of people that are just absolutely livid this went on in our country, small town community.
Yeah, I have too. Not hundreds, but definitely some people stopping by my house, knocking on my door.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you gonna do? There's not much I can do except protect our taxpayer dollars from going to events where people don't, organizations that people don't support, especially in my district.
Yeah, you're in the Indian Valley district. It's extremely conservative.
It is extremely conservative.
It's very rural. It's beautiful. You're out basically kind of up on the hills, and you overlook. Oh, it's so pretty out there. It's one of the prettiest parts of Floyd. But the people that live out there are extremely conservative.
Very, very conservative.
Yes.
Very kind, very welcoming, but very conservative.
For sure. So that's tough. That's
It is.
the social clash that's going on. You know, we've got to figure out how to work through it. And
I think the easiest way, not necessarily the best way, but the easiest way to help with the social clash that's happened because of the Junebug event is to definitely pull our tax dollars back from picking winners and losers and giving money to one organization that happens to ask, when in reality the government shouldn't be funding businesses or nonprofits.
I've had a problem with it forever because even in Christiansburg, once the businesses stood up to the town, the knee-jerk reaction from the elected officials was to start handing grants to our competitors to try to shut us down. So the government can use these tax dollars to pick winners and losers. And I remember there was a facade grant that Christiansburg decided to start giving people money to paint murals on their buildings. Well, I had just bought a building in Christiansburg. Do you think I would have gotten the money for the facade grant? Not in a million years. But it also teaches you the importance of who you put into office.
Right.
You know, you want to get like-minded people elected, so people that believe in dialing back grants and dialing back how much money gets spent, because ultimately it's on all of our backs, and a lot of us struggle to even pay our property taxes. You know, and Virginia, my parents live in East Tennessee. They're like, we won't live in Virginia in a million years. Y'all have income tax, you have property tax, you have car inspections, you have litter tax, you have cigarette tax, you have liquor tax, you know, grocery tax. It goes on. And yes, Tennessee has a sales tax that's higher to accommodate some of that income tax that they don't take in, but it's still, we pay way more taxes over here in Virginia.
Yes, we do. There are a lot of taxes, and ultimately people don't make the connection of their tax dollars being taken and where it's being spent.
Right.
And fighting that, throwing up the flags to say, wait a minute, why are we spending this money? Boy, you get a lot of pushback, you know.
Yeah.
When I started my first budget season, I had questions about the budget. What is this item? What is this job? I asked it of the sheriff's department. What is this? Fortunately, we had have a kind sheriff who was happy to come before us and say, this is what this job is, this is how much it costs, this is our cost savings with this position. Great.
You just wanted to know.
I just want to know.
I sat down with Brian Craig, the sheriff, when I first was elected, and went through the budget too because I was curious. And I mean, he had it down to the pencils and pens that I think they run a good operation here. But I have seen other municipalities and other counties where they're spending an extravagant amount of money.
And I think it's my job as an elected official to question every single expense. And when you question somebody's expenditures, their budget, and they get hostile, definitely thinking you're doing the wrong thing, and that makes me want to push back with my eraser.
Well, that's
and take that money away because you won't answer me.
And that's everybody's gut instinct.
Right.
I mean, it's like even when you're asking your kids a question and they start being combative, then you start thinking there's something to the road you're going down.
Right. And that was, that's what happened with me with the Junebug is I asked, where are you spending this money? Are you staying in the lines of your 501c3 mission statement and restrictions? Are you staying in these lines? I want to know. And boy, don't ask that question.
I think you were somewhat misquoted. I've had a lot of problems with the Cardinal News.
Right.
It's a very lefty organization that spins anything that's conservative, Republican. If they think that you...
Right. So my question was, are they coloring outside the lines?
With their 501c3.
With their 501c3.
Yeah.
Are they coloring outside their lines by doing some of the events that they participated in? Basic question. Apparently it's not Appalachian vernacular to use coloring outside the lines.
Is it not?
I guess not, so don't say it. Because the names I was called for using that phrase. It was amazing.
Are you serious?
I am.
You can't use the terminology coloring outside the line?
It's mostly the first word you can't use.
I use the term staying in your lane.
Right.
I use that all the time. Like, are you staying in your lane? And I guess it means essentially the same thing.
The same thing. But the words are different, and when people are looking for triggering words,
give me a break.
There you go. I said it.
Kalinda, that is wild. I would have never in a million years.
It's pretty wild. I grew up in California, pretty diverse population.
Yeah.
Pretty diverse. You don't learn, you just never grow up seeing people by the melanin content in their skin.
Of course.
Not something I see people by.
Of course.
And yeah.
That is just such a shame that it's gotten to that point.
It is.
And I know that the Juneteenth, there was something alluding to Juneteenth, that the Junebug celebrated Juneteenth. Well, I kind of wanted to talk about that on camera too. This Juneteenth, to me, I had never heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. Now I understand, it was the emancipation. I understand that.
Right. But that happened not in June. The Emancipation Proclamation was not signed in June. So if we're going to celebrate truly the freedom of the slaves, which is beautiful because nobody should be held slaves.
Of course.
Let's celebrate it in the right time.
But I felt like the whole thing was so contrived. It was some sort of a narrative to kind of split up the country's patriotism.
Yes.
And so that's been my issue with it from day one. Back to the American Revolution, July 4th, Independence Day. This is a day that we should all celebrate as Americans. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It's that our forefathers fought. They fought to create something that has never existed before, a whole new country not ruled by a king and queen, a whole new country ruled of, by, and for the people. And the people are everyone. So I just haven't really, I don't know where it kind of has come from, but it's just the Juneteenth has come about in the last couple of years. And to me, it was orchestrated to devalue the 4th of July and us coming together and being one.
Right. When you're celebrating individual groups, you're definitely singling people out.
Segregation.
Based on their skin color.
Is it not segregation?
It is. We've done this incredible turn from fighting for no segregation to these groups of people deciding to self-segregate.
Yes. It's the craziest thing. I cannot believe that we're at that point
and
in time.
It's very sad.
It is sad, and it's not how it should be at all.
No.
Well, we definitely agree.
Because we are all created in God's image.
That's right.
So
that's what brings us all together. Of course, some people don't want to believe that, but that's true. That's exactly right. Well, gosh, Kalinda, this has been so interesting to talk to you. Is there anything else those are some pretty hot topic issues that have been going on in our little county of Floyd County, one of the smallest counties in Virginia, and we've had all this craziness going on. I guess those are kind of the big things that you've dealt with. Where do you see things going? Let's just say with the Junebug Center, do you think it will be defunded?
Well, we voted last night to go forward with our budget, and they will be getting the money that was appropriated to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's been my desire, and one of the things that did come out of this whole Junebug debacle was I'm going to now have accountability for all of the community agencies that get county taxpayer money.
Will you be able to interview each agency and really get to the root of how that money is being spent now?
That's what I've asked for.
Great.
So don't give me an estimate on how many people you serve. I want hard numbers.
Yes.
For a few years. What are you really doing for our Floyd County population? So ultimately, accountability across the board.
That's so fantastic. Because right now, prices are sky high, gas is still expensive, inflation. We don't, the citizens don't have any more money to give. We are taxed enough already. So, I think
Yeah, so if your budget is tight, my household budget is tight, why should the government be expanding their budget and taking even more from us? The government should be truly limiting itself. What services are absolutely required by the Constitution, by Virginia Code, and start paring it down. What is necessary? Because we're coming upon a time, I believe, that it's going to be necessities, not wants.
I agree with you on that. Let's talk real quick, because I told you earlier, I said I'm going to put you on the spot about the green boxes. So, can we talk about that for just a minute?
We sure can.
My dumpsters that I've gone to for probably 13, 14 years near my house kind of vanished into thin air. And so, I drive a farm use truck to take my trash to the dumpsters. I guess that's still legal in Virginia to drive your farm use to the dumpsters. I'm not really sure. I'm probably just told on myself. But I headed out at 9:30 one night with my big old, Jed Clampett truck piled high with trash for the last month, and only to discover I don't have a dumpster to put it in. So, and I knew you all were working on some of that. So what's going on with that?
This is another hot topic.
I'm sure.
Because the county's green boxes for refuse disposal are a huge issue. We have wildlife getting into them. We have people dropping off animals
from other counties.
Them. Oh, and then we have the other county disposal. Yeah, because our green box sites are unmanned, so anybody can dump anything at any time, which is a problem. We spend a lot of money as a county taking our trash up to the landfill in somewhere else in another county.
Yeah.
And we're taking everybody else's trash too, not just ours.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to manage green box sites, trying to not have people dropping off furniture and mattresses and construction debris and tires, and it's becoming unmanageable. People just aren't cooperating. So the county purchased its first convenience center location. So we'll have a manned area.
Does that mean that it's open 24/7?
No.
Because that's another problem for people like us. We take it at 9:30 at night.
I do too.
We work all the time.
I do too. I take my trash at night. So we're going to try the convenience centers like they do in Montgomery County. Our county is not conducive to having curbside pickup without a major investment in infrastructure, which would be, it's cost prohibitive.
Are you just doing this as a test pilot program?
It'll be our test.
Okay.
But I don't see I don't see how we can continue the green boxes with the cost of garbage trucks and the longevity of the trucks not being there anymore.
What percentage of your budget is for just that?
I'd have to look it up, but it's a couple $100,000 a year. So that's significant. Running the roads every day to empty green boxes around the county.
I certainly don't like more government, and I feel like manned convenience centers is more Big Brother. You're well aware I voted against stuff like that the whole time I'm in the General Assembly. If it's Big Brother watching what you're putting in the green boxes, I would have voted against it, just like I voted against facial recognition technology and all that. So I'm not real thrilled with it.
I don't know what other options we have.
Yeah.
Because when our green boxes are filled with tires, when it does go up to Cloyd's Mountain and we haven't caught those tires, then we pay even more.
Yeah.
So it's just an increasing uncontrollable expense that needs to be
And I'm sure
reined
you've
in.
thought of everything, but I mean, the sheriff's department, do they watch cameras? And
So cameras are a challenge because almost all the green box sites are on private property. So you get into private property rights. Does the property owner want cameras? And the expense of doing a camera stuff at a green box site is very expensive also. So, and we probably need to hire more deputies just to go through the photos
SIM cards,
of
right.
the green box sites, and they need to be picked up every day and dumped. So it's that's a huge endeavor that was looked at also.
I don't love change in a lot of ways.
Nobody does.
I love that Floyd is the country and it's farmland, and you ride out and dump your own trash in the dumpster at whatever time is convenient to you. So
we love it, as do the outside county people who are abusing it. So
couldn't we just make a stricter law? Because I know like certain North Carolina towns really go after people that litter.
Mhm.
Like they charge them with astronomical fines. Could we not just target, certain things like that with just having some ordinances that would really slap
A
it
lot
to
of
people?
so we're working on that right now.
Make some examples out of some
Right,
people?
we're working on that right now, but a lot of that is the ability of enforcement, the limited deputies, the hours. In the past, when they've done deputy monitoring, I've heard stories of a deputy will be watching a green box site, out of sight. They go into town 20 minutes, and in that 20 minutes, those green boxes were full of construction debris. So people know when they're not being watched, and there's so many sites across the county. So
Gosh.
it's a challenge.
Y'all
It's a
got
big
some pretty
challenge.
hot topics. I mean, it's all, change and you don't think green boxes are a big deal until you go to haul your
Right.
month load of trash in the back of your truck in the middle of the night and your boxes aren't there, and then you've got to go an extra 10 miles, and you're just not expecting that.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I hope we can troubleshoot this and try to figure out a better way. I hate the idea of manning convenience centers. I really hate the idea of private pickup. I mean, I know there's counties that do it, even rural counties, but gosh, it's just like, I'm just so not into more government.
Me too. It's one of those really hard decisions to do, weighing out all the options.
Yeah.
There's no
catch-22,
good option.
right?
There's no good option.
Yeah, gosh, what a shame. Well, so anything else? So, I wanted to talk more or bring up. So tell us what you do as your hobbies.
In all my leisure time?
Yeah, in your leisure time when you're not combating all the rude emails and getting chewed out.
Right. So I decided that we really wanted to be hobby farmers. I wanted to be a hobby farmer while my husband works to support me. So we have a couple dairy cows, and I milk some jerseys and have herd shares available, and
That's
butter
so cool.
and cheese and yogurt, and I used to have a coral reef aquarium in California. Can't do that out here, so I have cows.
It's so cool. I've been to visit her house, and I've even gone out into the pasture and met her cows, and they just come up and lick you and like lean into you. They're the biggest babies. They're so sweet. But are you still milking twice a day?
Milking twice a day.
She milks twice a day, and you get how many gallons at this point? You have four that you
I'm
milk?
milking 3 right now.
3.
A 4th one will come into milk in a month, and so I'm getting about 10 gallons a day.
That's a
out of all
lot.
the cows.
That's
Total.
a lot, and the milk is excellent. We've been buying into the milk share program with Kalinda, and it's just phenomenal. And I can only imagine the amount of work that goes into it. So I have the utmost respect that you're one of the last dairy farmers left.
But I only milk when the weather's good, when it's not too cold, not too
Right.
hot, not rainy, not when I'm not sick.
Right.
So
Yeah, because they'll just hang out,
Right.
right? Yeah. I've begged my husband for years to let us get a milk cow, and that is one thing he has solidly put his foot down about. But I'm still working on him. I feel like the more I work on him, the more
we'll work on that.
lets down his guard, and eventually we'll get it going. But now that I'm I'm still in politics for the next 6 months. I'm still an elected delegate in the District 7, which is still Floyd, Pulaski, and Montgomery County. But where I didn't win the last election for the primary, I won't be in politics after that. So, my new hobby is we farm, and we're going to be doing a little farmer's market over here at Jared's office. And his office is at 464 Christiansburg Pike in Floyd. We're going to build a little shed outside, and there's an unfinished carport garage that we're going to finish it in and run plumbing and electric to be able to use it as a prep area. But yeah, my other little hobby is going to be this podcast. So I've got quite a few people that are involved in this. We've got some folks volunteering their efforts to edit these and to help post on. We're going to be posting this on Instagram and Rumble and Truth Social and Facebook and Twitter, and we also, one interesting thing coming from state level politics, I now have 150,000 email addresses. So we're also going to be bombarding people's emails with these episodes if people want to watch them. And you can donate to our organization. It's called Renegade Rebellion Media. So, and I wanted to talk about that too. There's a group of us kind of behind the scenes that we text and we get on videos and we talk about how we're going to make this work. But I want to talk about the name really quick because, you know, it took us a little while to arrive at the name and the logo, and, you know, we're going to start sending that out here shortly. But, you know, I looked it up, and, you know, Renegade Rebellion Media, someone who rejects or defies convention. So, you know, and the synonyms for it were outlaws and rebels. So I thought, you know, that is so perfect for what we're trying to do with this podcast. We want people, and what people don't realize, we have outlaws and, you know, renegades in our own community that have even been elected. I was one. Kalinda is one. You know, we're people that we don't vote party line all the time. We try to use our brain and analyze the big picture. And there's a lot of folks like that. You know, they're in all levels of government. Some of them are not in government, and that's who we're going to be bringing on this podcast to talk.
The ones who want to do the right thing, not the easy thing.
That's right. And what I found in Richmond is, you know, they get elected, it kind of, the power and prestige goes to their heads, and then come in the lobbyists, and that's how they get funding and they get money and they get campaign contributions, and that's how they keep their power and their prestige.
Right.
So in Richmond, it's like one big herd mentality, and I was all alone by myself thinking outside the box, and I just realized the entire herd, it's kind of a uniparty up there. They all, you know, just sort of kowtow to what they call leadership, which I wasn't real impressed with the leadership in Richmond. I didn't feel like there really was any leadership. It was very moderate, did not represent the values of Floyd and Southwest Virginia. And I was just very disenchanted with what I saw up there. So I enjoy being behind the scenes. I didn't really like being the front of it. I'm hoping to get other people that'll help host these podcasts, but I've got time on my hands right now. So, you know, people are probably going to wish they left me in Richmond when this is over. But I was able, the Lord puts you on these paths, and you meet so many people. And I think that was really what happened to me, is I got to meet so many people, and I got a real education in how politics really work, the underbelly. And, you know, now I think I've got this time of rest to be able to get the word out and to bring all these people on this podcast and to talk and, you know, help fellow Americans understand what's going on across Virginia.
I think it's definitely not the way people think government works.
Yes.
Is how, you know, how it works.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for good or bad, there is a lot that goes on in closed doors.
Correct.
And even, you know, I've even found that out even in the Republican Party. I mean, it's so tough, because once you get your people, you know, kind of running things, then you resort to the same mechanisms that they've always used, such as calling people up and saying, you need to make this motion and I'll second it. And I've done those things. You know, I've realized that if we want to get certain things passed, you know, I've got to get on this bandwagon and I've got to help out to make sure that it goes this certain path. And you know, that is politics.
It is. It's ugly.
It's ugly. And people don't realize that that's how it works.
Right.
And if you do want to get things accomplished, you know, but there's got to be give and take, and you know, you just hope you can get people to see it your way. And when I say your way, you know, abiding by the Constitution, but I think, you know, even in your situation, you may not feel like you've had a lot of wins, but honestly, Kalinda, I think you have.
I've had some significant wins.
I think you were instrumental in your whole board realizing that Floyd Fest thing was a very bad idea. Like, your whole board, who ended up not really being with you on that?
Jerry Booth wanted some tighter
Did he want
music
zoning?
restrictions.
Okay.
He wanted tighter ends to music times. I'm okay with them playing after midnight because I really believe that they're not going to be disturbing a huge radius of and it's their freedom. So I think Jerry Booth was the only one who was not happy with the sound restriction.
But your board didn't go wild to try to implement zoning.
No.
I mean, not one person on that whole board was really ready to go down that road.
But when people ask for the restrictions on stuff like Floyd Fest or barking dogs in a kennel or gunfire because somebody's target shooting, the easiest answer is zoning.
Right.
Nobody wants zoning.
Right.
Nobody wants that.
And we're going to have some Board of Supervisors members from Carroll County. They've been looking at some zoning situations because they had a methadone clinic that came into their community that was very much unwanted by the citizens. Mm-hmm. And so I've been in the ear of a couple supervisors like, don't do it, don't go down the road of zoning. Right. But I am going to bring them on this show. I had one fella that committed this morning to definitely coming on the show to talk about it. So, these things are going on across the whole state, and it's, in so many situations, it is growing the government, and there's little people like us trying to dial it back and, call it. I hate that the left gets to own the term progressive, like they're progressing progress.
Right.
And we have the terminology conservatism, where we want to keep status quo, not change and all that. But progress is not always a good idea.
No. It would almost be regressive. I want regressive government. I want them backing down and getting smaller.
I do too.
But it doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
But I see it even on the Board of Supervisors in Little Floyd County, when you start giving pushback to the agenda of increased taxes, increased government, increased government in your life, there's a lot of pushback, even from the so-called conservatives or Republicans, because they want to protect their things. I don't have a dog in this fight. I have nothing I need to protect, and I think.
Maybe a lot of it is education, and I've thought that, when people are in government a long time, they don't always view it as it's government. They view it as a job or a business. They almost look at it as a business venture. Right. When it's not. Government is its own thing. Businesses are totally different. And I come from, owning small businesses, and the only time I've ever been involved in government is the last 2 years of being an elected delegate. And, but my father was military, and my grandfather, was in the military, and I know how the military works, but there is a lot of wastefulness in government because there's not a lot of oversight. And when you're in a small business and you're actually competing, you have to have tons of oversight. You have to watch every single penny, or else you go out of business. There's real repercussions.
Right. There's no incentive for government to be mindful of their pennies. There's
None.
No incentive.
Well, the only incentive is if you raise people's taxes to where they're really angry, they'll vote you out of office. So the elected officials can get voted out of office. So, but a lot of times, I'm not even sure that weighs into their thinking when they go and vote. I don't know that people always understand who on the board raised their taxes, who was fighting to decrease their taxes, right, who wants to limit funding to the nonprofits. I don't know that they always understand.
No, I don't think they do either. There's definitely a lack of understanding in the general public for the ramifications of who you vote for.
And, even in my own world, I always take it back to that, I guess. But, my opponent was able to just absolutely lie about my voting record. I was the third most right-wing member of the General Assembly. He wasn't even in the top 40.
No.
But yet he brainwashed an entire group of people to think that he was actually conservative. He voted for big government every time.
I think something about being able to shut down churches again if there's another crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not freedom.
He codified that.
Right.
And that's what no one understands. He blasted mailers to the churches saying that, he's going to keep churches from being shut down. Well, actually what he did...
Except in these cases.
He codified it to where it now definitely falls under the governor to determine if they can shut down churches. So, it's such a mess.
I think that's where I know I get a lot of opposition is when I raise these mistruths, these lies. When I raise these lies out and put it in the light, that's where I get a lot of the pushback.
Well,
they don't want to be exposed.
Okay, and I wanted to talk about taxes too. So, property values went up.
Personal,
a lot.
Cars?
It was personal property, cars,
Yes,
vehicles. Vehicles went through the roof because
Correct.
there was a shortage during COVID, and so it made everybody's vehicles way more pricey. So when those valuations came in, this glut of money followed that because I don't know what percentage it is that's taxed.
It's not a very high percent, but yes, there was a huge glut of money across the Commonwealth. And there were a couple of us who really wanted to do rebates, lower the tax rate, for just 1 year, make this right.
And other counties did.
Correct.
Grayson County,
Carroll County did something else. There were a lot of counties that either wrote check. I think Montgomery County also did the lowering. So there were a lot of localities who did that adjustment, and I couldn't get that topic to be discussed because we need the money. Like, no, we don't.
Do you know
we need to cut spending?
Do you know how much extra money ended up coming in for Floyd?
I'd have to look it up, but it's significant. It's well over $500,000.
Wow. And I remember having a discussion with you at some point. It was just the options weren't real great for how to even disperse it. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of cost associated with it. Everyone was kind of scratching their heads with how they would even go about doing rebates.
Right. Instead of just saying we're going to do it and figure it out, there was pushback.
That's tough.
So it's really hard when you're not following leadership and you want to do the right thing. You get pushback.
Been there, done that, girl. I know. It's something else, and it's just really hard to sell where you're coming from. It's you would think it'd be an easy sell because it's reducing taxes and it's the things that the Republicans are supposed to stand for.
Right. I think it's in the Republican Party creed of Virginia is limited government.
It is.
And spending.
And free market, which means not funding nonprofits.
Right.
Free market. But I almost feel like it's an education piece, and I don't know how we can get to a point where we're actually educating all the Republicans for what it really means to be a Republican and where you're supposed to stand. Because we have people in our party screaming for noise ordinance restrictions against people shooting guns. When you have that and they're coming to Republican meetings, Houston, we've got a problem.
Right. They don't see that they're contradictory. But I think that's where I think that's why I'm called to do this right now, is to stand up and be that voice. I don't mind taking the flack. I don't mind being called names and attacked and everything else. Bring it, because I'm ready with my facts, and my stance does not change.
I just love her. This is the reason I had her on episode 1. I just think she's something else. And I've heard people in the community like, well, Kalinda's just not fighting for us. She's not doing what we put her there to do. And I know they say the same thing about me, but there was no way the whole 2 years I've been there, you don't even have time to blab about what you're actually working on because you're in the trenches. It's like you're fighting a war, and you're exhausted. You're in the trenches. Your family doesn't get to see you. I mean, people are stopping by your house, and your whole world is now the community and people, and as much as you love people, because you have to love people to get into this, but it is very exhausting and overwhelming. And I have all the respect in the world for you, because I think actually being a board of supervisor is even more difficult than what I did, because I'm away and it's big picture and nobody knows what the heck you're doing anyway. But on a local level, they go sit and scream at you at your local board of supervisors meetings.
They do.
And they really, many times they're not very respectful to you. They don't treat you with any sort of respect.
No, they don't. And they don't, when given the opportunity to hear why or how, they don't want to hear it. They just want their thing done right now. You should.
Yeah.
You should do
You
this.
should do this for me.
Well, tell me how to do it.
Yeah. Well, I hope too that over time, and I encouraged this in Christiansburg because I was very involved with Christiansburg, the town politics, and some of the county politics in Montgomery County because our businesses were there. But they were doing closed door sessions every minute. Like they would go into closed door and they'd come out for 5 minutes and, pretty much tell the constituents what's going to happen. They would vote on something. But when we got Johanna Hicks elected in Christiansburg, she really put up a fight about not signing a non-disclosure agreement and about not having closed door meetings. And she really changed the course of how they operate in Christiansburg. And the sad part is the media went after her. They made her look so toxic and so destructive, but she really put up a hell of a fight, and she caused a lot of humiliation. She caused 3 people to end up not running again. And so we got some new people elected over there, and now they really don't spend a whole lot of time in closed session. They really limit it to truly like personnel issues that need to be quiet to keep people's dignity. But for the most part, they have open discussions about what they think for God and everybody to judge and to see. And I think transparency with constituents and in government is so important.
It is. I know we have long closed sessions on our board, but a lot of that is not in my control at all, but we do truly limit our closed sessions to contract negotiations, personnel business.
That's good.
Things that really can't be out in the public for
and I definitely was not sliding Floyd.
No.
I've
you've seen our board meetings. There's a lot of chatter that goes on.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of efficiency in our meetings.
Yeah. Well,
after coming off an 8-hour meeting yesterday,
to me, it's very homegrown country. Like I have such a huge place in my heart for this community, and I've seen, Montgomery County has a bloated budget, massive budget. They spend money on everything. There's no limit to what they're willing to raise taxes to. I've seen such a behemoth monster, bloated government over there that I let Floyd off the hook a lot. And I'm even telling Kalinda a lot, like, you need to see what goes on in Montgomery County.
Right. I know that, Floyd is a great place, very different than the surrounding Montgomery, Roanoke County.
Yes.
Very, very small town feel here still.
Yes.
But we are facing the big world problems, which it's a definite painful transition to accept that we have these challenges and we need to face them. So.
Yes, I know. Well, I have all the respect in the world for you.
Thank you. And I respect you having gone up to the snake pit in Richmond for 2 years.
It sure was. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. But you know what? I've got my life back now, and we're really happy we've got a great life, and Floyd's a great place to live. And when I would drive, I would be in Richmond for 2 or 3 months, and I'd come driving back, and I would only see deer as far as you could see, because I live really in the country down a gravel road, and there's fields and mountains and deer, crossing the road. I'd pass more deer than I'd pass cars or people, and I just would feel so blessed. Like driving back, you really do want to kiss the ground when you get back to Floyd. So I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I think I'm somewhat lackadaisical about being judgmental about anything except when it comes to that Junebug Center. That just sent me into orbit.
It was a little bit across the line.
I just saw the pictures yesterday, and those pictures I could not believe, and I really couldn't believe anybody would stand for it and say that it's okay. So the people that are willing to argue on behalf of that, I cannot fathom what's going through your heads.
It's unraveling the moral fabric of our society.
For sure.
It's very destructive.
And there really truly is grooming of children and things like that that's really where things start, as you take your kids and you inundate them with the perversion, and it becomes acceptable. And so it's no wonder that when these kids get to be in high school and they don't know what gender they are, well, you've confused them. You've got some crazy lefties that have helped to confuse these kids, and I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to do anything I can to fight against it, and I know you are too.
I am.
So thank you so much.
In the ways I can, it's a challenge.
Yes, Kalinda, thank you. It has been such a pleasure, and you come on anytime if you want to host these podcasts. You're very down to earth, and you can talk to everybody. And I know, I'm looking for more people that are willing to sit on camera and talk. I don't want it to be just me, because I have a problem with bringing in my own little anecdotes, but I want to share it with people because I haven't had a chance to tell everybody. It's almost like unraveling from the trauma.
Right.
You talk it out.
Yeah, it is very traumatizing doing this public service. It's eye-opening, it's traumatizing, it's life-changing.
And at first, you're so excited. You're like...
And overwhelmed.
You're like, I won. I'm going to make all these changes. Everyone's going to listen. We're going to get so much accomplished. And then the dirtiness kind of starts seeping in, and you start to realize this is a lot of negativity. I've just brought like this satanic negativity into my life.
Why would anybody want to do this?
You'd have to be crazy.
Yeah.
But I still trust that a lot of people intrinsically, I just think locally we still have some good people, and I just pray that we keep some good folks in Floyd looking out for our best interests, and we don't get some of the nastiness.
That can stand up to the pressures
and understand, exactly what every move, the domino effect of all of your moves.
Yes.
Because some of these moves, it's just like grant funding. You don't think it can do harm, but it does.
Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, too, that grant funding opened a door of oversight.
I love it.
So it's a very interesting chess game.
And I think that's divine. I've always believed that when these 3D chess moves happen, it's never really me orchestrating it. It's just sort of like the Lord puts us in these positions, and then this thing opens up, and we're able to.
Right. So who's ready to step in the fight and truly fight for protecting our God-given rights?
Well, I'm going to pray that you are able to really educate everyone around you as to how all this works and the importance of leaning into the Constitution. And, I'm just going to pray that you get a lot of support from your board.
Thank you.
For sure.
If not, it's been a good run.
I'm there with you. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back next week with a lady that is the chair of the GOP in Galax, Miss Heather Piles, and she has been the legislative assistant for Senator Amanda Chase. So she's going to come talk about everything going on in Galax and the Republican Party, and we're going to find out some dirt about Richmond. So we'll see you guys later. Thank you. I think that's good.